Hello and welcome back to the Conversation Cabinet. Today we're very fortunate to be joined by Laila Cunningham. Thank you for inviting us to Reform HQ.
Yeah, this is quite exciting.
It is. It's great to have you guys here.
Thank you very much.
It's a great, awesome building. We've never been so high up for an interview.
Yeah.
I know, and it's got like a 360 view of Westminster.
Oh yeah, it's
awesome.
incredible.
We were in there doing a recording yesterday, but this is quite cool in its own right. It's so high up.
Already met some quite cool people here already. But could you tell us a little bit about you, what you've done before, just so for people who may not know who you are just yet?
Yeah, so I was a Conservative councillor, elected in 2022 in Westminster, and I worked as a senior criminal prosecutor for the CPS in London, in Westminster. I covered courts from Westminster, Croydon, Wimbledon, sometimes Bromley and Beckley, and then I defected to the Tories, to Reform, sorry, in June. I'm a mother of 7 kids.
Wow.
Actually, I've got 3 teenage boys. Well, actually, no, one's 20 now.
Must be
one's
quite a
18. Yeah, exactly. And one's 15. And I've got teenage girls. And yeah, that's it really. That's why you find me here.
Is that sense of family that Reform pushes, those sorts of conservative values, is that why you align yourself with the Reform Party?
One of the reasons. I always believe in family and country first before anything. And some of the narrative that's been pushed by successive governments undermines family values and undermines national pride, and that has bothered me for a long time, and it bothers my children as well.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, my kids go to a school that they were taught, don't be masculine. There's something, they were forced to say toxic masculinity. They would have PSHE classes on Friday that would tell them, it's fine to go out in a skirt, not a problem. And they would ask them all the time what their gender is. And my boys would be like, I'm a boy. And they tried to normalize what, in my opinion, it's not that it's not fine, but it's not normal. I told my son, if you turn up for a job interview, he wants to work in banking in a skirt, you probably won't get it. And it was just trying to always chip away at their belief system for an ideology that the school wanted to push. That really bothered me and bothered them.
Is this sense of like common sense politics that I think you're getting at, was that the turning point for you? That you feel like the Conservative Party lost and Reform has?
I think it's worse than that. I feel that the Conservative Party betrayed the country, betrayed their voters, because people consistently voted for one thing and the Conservatives delivered something else. They always went on a platform of reducing net migration in the 20,000s. It ballooned. And what's worse is the people they let in were given jobs that can't sustain life in the country, so they ended up being dependent on the state, paid for by British taxpayers, who are paying for people who are not British. That's one of the aspects. They're meant to be the party of law and order. Crime spiraled. We are facing a rape epidemic. We're facing muggings, robberies. People don't feel safe on the streets anymore, and that's because the Conservatives deprioritise public safety. They cut policing. They shut a lot of magistrates' courts, and that's where all criminal proceedings start. And they opened our borders, and they housed illegal migrants in the middles of towns and villages. You saw the stabbing in Uxbridge yesterday was committed by an asylum seeker who came here illegally but was granted indefinite leave to remain, and that's what happens. But also they let us down on the economy. They're meant to be the party of low tax. We had the highest taxation since World War II. Public services were the worst they've ever been. My sister passed away from cancer 2.5 years ago, and she was let down by the NHS because of lack of resources. And so I feel like the country's paying so much and getting nothing in return, and being ignored and almost sacrificed in some instances. And that's really what made me switch. And then the real turning point was when the grooming gangs came back into the public discussion. I think it was around January. I couldn't believe the court records that were released, and I couldn't believe that both parties were silent or didn't do everything in their power to stop it.
Do you think though that obviously reform hasn't actually been in governance yet? Do you think something about the Conservatives having the traditionality of being in power and knowing what to do in governance may, make them have a little bit of a better record than reform, who may necessarily not have been in power before and not really know how to make sure government can truly function properly and effectively?
But they have been in power for 14 years, and it shows that knowledge is not. Knowledge doesn't equal success. It's got to do with political will, political courage, and they've lost that. They took voters for granted. They thought that Conservative voters would always vote for them because there was never ever a choice on the right before. And so they just tinkered around the edges and did what they wanted and ignored their voters, ignored their members. And I think actually what the government needs is a fresh pair of eyes, someone who isn't the establishment like Nigel, someone who isn't scared to remove us. If an international treaty doesn't work for us, he's not scared to say we don't need it. And I think actually it's in our benefit that we haven't had government experience, because we can go in there and do what needs to be done. We're not beholden to any group. We don't owe anyone anything. We just owe our voters and the British public what they vote for.
You talk about treaties that might not work. It's maybe not a treaty, but the ECHR, Nigel has said he wants us to leave. Do you think that's the right decision, and why?
100%. So we've been discussing this for a very long time. So basically, it's not only the ECHR, but the ECHR is preventing. The ECHR was created a very long time ago to prevent tyranny in governments. It was never meant to prevent us from deporting illegal migrants. It was never ever meant to undermine the sovereignty of nations that have implemented it, and that's what is happening now. So we don't get to decide who stays in this country. Strasbourg does, and that there is this fundamental problem with that. And in terms of the human rights, I mean, for me, it's almost a misnomer the way it's worded, because we created human rights. We created trial by jury, Magna Carta, habeas corpus.
Yeah.
We don't need the ECHR to tell us that. And right now, the ECHR is preventing us from keeping our borders safe and from keeping our country safe. So of course it has to go. And any government that doesn't do that is failing in their duty to keep us safe. But, sorry, there's also the Refugee Convention, I think it's called that, which doesn't allow you to deport people to places of torture where they might be tortured. That also has to be disallowed. You saw that.
I was about to say that.
Yeah, Kibatu, he was deported today. The Borders Act says that the Home Secretary must deport someone after a 12-month sentence has been awarded, 12 months or longer. I don't want to wait till someone's raped or killed to deport someone. I want the trigger not to be a 12-month sentence. I want the trigger to be illegal entry. You know, only 1% of illegal entrants are prosecuted. They basically decriminalised it. You guys need a passport to get into Heathrow. These guys don't. How is that fair? We're not equal under the law. And if you're a foreign hostile state, like the Taliban or the Muslim Brotherhood, why would you bother for a visa? You just rock up on a boat and it's guaranteed entry.
So someone might argue that something like the European Convention on Human Rights was created by us after World War II, and therefore we almost have a duty to both protect the people that are coming here, but then also maintain it to make sure that these protections are upheld. What would you say to someone like that?
Sorry, can I also just add to that? Surely, if we leave, there might be quite a gap in legislation to protect people's human rights when they come over here.
So we had human rights before the ECHR was ever created, as I said before.
Yeah.
And the way the ECHR was embedded into our legislation was really through the Human Rights Act that was brought in under Blair, and he did it to have a rapprochement to Europe, to get closer to Europe. But as I said, human rights is embedded in all our legislation. It's embedded in our common law. We don't need it. You know, freedom of speech, trial by jury, right to privacy. We don't need the Human Rights Convention to tell us. Right now, the Human Rights Convention, ECHR, is preventing us from keeping people safe. It's preventing us from removing illegal migrants. There's no benefit to it right now.
Sure. I think if we were to leave, doesn't it allow us to send illegal immigrants back to war-ridden countries?
I mean, that goes down actually to, I think that's the Refugee Convention, where you can't send them back to be tortured. But don't forget, they're coming from France. They're coming from France. They're not coming from I have a niece of mine who says, you know, you got to understand where these men are coming from. They're coming from France, and I'm actually sick and tired of being lectured by people all the time that when I say that I think I will treat each and every one of them as an illegal migrant, as a criminal, because they've entered illegally. The British state doesn't owe them anything. And so I won't give them the benefit of the doubt. They should not be offered our human rights, all the human rights that Britain comes for, because they broke the rules, they broke the law, and they're part of a huge smuggling gang. They don't give us information on who it is. We have no idea who these gangs are. So they're complicit, and in their complicity, we reward them by giving them free housing.
Am I correct in believing that your parents migrated over here?
Yeah.
Was it from Egypt?
Yeah, in the 60s.
Yeah. Do you not find it quite, I don't know, interesting to be like saying you're against immigration when your family ties? What's that like for you personally?
So I'm not against immigration. We're not against immigration. Again, my niece, I had the same argument with her. I've never ever said we're against immigration, and Reform's not against immigration. Zia's the son of immigrants as well, who've dedicated their life to the NHS. My sister is a retired NHS consultant. Her daughter's an NHS consultant now. I was a criminal prosecutor. We've dedicated our life to public service, and immigrants who come here and want to assimilate and embrace our way of life and love the country, they're more than welcome and give, but we cannot. Illegal migrants and legal migration is two totally separate subjects. And I'm happy to go into legal migration, but illegal migration, we cannot allow people to come into this country uninvited on a boat. It's not serious, and it's danger.
Even if they're suffering or they've come from a place of war.
They've only come from France. We're an island. You cannot come from a place of war into England.
But don't you think, obviously, but don't you think that these people are, as Josh said, they have an element of suffering. They are doing this there is for not all of them obviously, but there will be a motive behind a few or a good few that may necessarily actually have, being fleeing from suffering or wanting a better life somewhere else. Don't you think that's
and we've
almost have like a duty to protect them?
I'm sure they will have a better life, but I don't believe we have a duty to protect them. We have a duty to protect the British public. What we don't realise is that these guys throw their documents. We have no idea who they are. They could be serial rapists, serial murderers. They could be terrorists, and they're coming into this country, and we don't know who they are. So I think, no, we don't have a duty to protect them. We have a duty to protect the British public, and that's what they expect from their governments. And if you enter this country, you should be deemed a criminal.
So you think that obviously we've historically labelled ourselves as we're amazing, we've colonised half the world, it's an amazing country. Do you not think that that's almost like embedded in people's cultures like abroad? Like people still have that mindset of, oh, Britain's so great, I want to go there because my country's not so great at the moment. Do you think that doesn't matter, that they should just not be let in?
I mean, of course Britain's great.
Yeah.
That's why they want to come here. I don't blame them for wanting to come.
Okay.
Right? But I when someone was killed yesterday, a young girl was sexually assaulted in Epping, another woman was raped in Hyde Park. For me, one rape and one murder is too much.
Right.
And I don't know who any of these men are, and I don't know if you saw, but we allowed a convicted bomb maker from Egypt, from the Muslim Brotherhood, to come in. It's not about them. It's about us. We need to prioritize us, British government, our safety, not prioritize their needs. It's madness to think that their needs and their priorities trump those of the British public. If the government doesn't protect us, then who will?
Yeah. Reform has, I think, quite a broad spectrum of people who. I think obviously most people who are support reform will want a stop to illegal immigration, but then there also is a spectrum within that of people who want how you kind of treat that immigration and how to deal with illegal immigration. Some people have a bit more extreme methods, some be a bit more, a bit softer. What do you think Reform's kind of illegal immigration strategy will be if they are empowered? Do you think it will be a softer form, saying like, just you're going back, or will it be quite an extreme method of strictly taking these people off and maybe even hurting them in the process?
Who said hurting them?
Or as in, you've seen people, obviously this is not the whole demographic, but some people say like, standing on the beach, shooting them while they're jumping off.
I've never seen that. I've never
Really?
heard of that.
There's a lot of this rhetoric online.
Oh, I
Yeah,
have-
especially online, not necessarily in person. But
Yeah, no, I've never seen that, and I've never heard. I mean, no, we're not into that, but at all.
Yeah, you'd hope not.
Wow, I've never actually seen that. But I do know. So as I said, Kibatu, who is the migrant who sexually assaulted a girl in Epping,
Yeah.
he was deported today. So there is the political will. We don't have a returns agreement with Ethiopia yet. We managed to deport him, and I want to see a government that doesn't act. I don't want the trigger to deport an illegal migrant to be a 12-month sentence or more. I want the trigger to be illegal entry. That's the only way to keep the public safe. And we shouldn't house them in towns and villages. And all over Europe, they're housed in detention centres away from the public, because those governments recognise that unknown risk, that we don't know who they are, and they recognise that to protect the public, they must keep them away. Our government ignores that unknown risk. They ignore it, and they place them in the middle of towns and villages near schools. It's madness when you think about it. If you commit a sexual offence in this country, you go on the sexual offenders register, and that for life. These guys come with a clean slate, and by the way, when they commit an offence and they go into court, they are treated like a first offender. We don't know if they're a first offender or not. So British people have to live with their past. They don't. They get a clean slate.
Do you not think that anyone could be anything? I mean, the majority of rapes in this country are by white people. So do you not think that anyone could be a rapist? Anyone could become a criminal, or is it that ambiguity of people might already be criminals and are coming here?
No one's denying that we have a huge problem with sexual offences and rape. It's an epidemic in this country, and that's why actually Reform's the only party that's calling for tougher sentences and tougher policing. But there's a big difference. The rapists coming in, or the sexual assaulters, or the terrorists coming in on boats don't have to be here. They're being imported by our governments, and that is a big difference. We can deal with our own, but just because we have some here doesn't say, let's accept more in. No.
As a demographic, I think young people are a bit more left-leaning typically.
Definitely.
What would you say, to people who are going to be voting in the next general election, or in even smaller elections where Reform is now quite a large kind of chunk of the polling rate? What would you say to young people who may be voting for the first time and are wanting kind of possibly either stronger borders or young people, or like specifically left people? How would you appeal to them as Reform? Because I think possibly for young people, Reform have a bit of a bad rap.
You say that, but actually at our conference, it was all so many young people.
Really?
And young people, so many, I was shocked, way more than any Conservative conference I've been to. It's actually quite amazing.
Well,
and then I'd see them with their parents, and I'd be like, oh, so you brought them? And they go, no, they brought me. And I think, young people have been sold a dream, right? You go to a university, you work hard, and you'll get a job when you come out. But that's not the case, is it? We have 30 and 40-year-olds in this country who will never own a home, and a state that can't provide for it. You've been let down by the state. Mass migration lets you down because it taxes all our public services. They have to be housed. I have residents who have lived in London for decades, and their kids are number 400 on the list for social housing, but someone who's been here for 5 minutes, doesn't speak English, is at the top of the list. How is that fair? I had a resident, she's a bus driver, and she was crying to me. She's like, I work so hard, I can never go on holiday. And because she's just above that threshold where she can work, she works so she doesn't get any help. And she says, I'm paying so much in rent just to pay rent. And the person next door is a family of 3 who are living completely free, and they've just arrived and they don't speak English. So we want to see innovation in England. We want to see young people taught skills of the future. Every high school person, every kid to graduate to be AI native. I have kids, it drives me mental. I get called up for their handwriting. I'd rather get called up for their touch typing speed as opposed to that. And I think that's what we're offering you. We're offering you also an economy that encourages businesses to open here. Right now we are number 20 in the world for IPOs. That's the City of London. We're behind Mexico. That means companies are not choosing to list here, and with that they take their taxes, they take their jobs, and that's because they've been over-regulated and over-taxed. And it's so detrimental to young people, because anyone with talent who gets a job in America will go, and why not? Starting salaries there are 100,000. They're 30,000 here from a top university.
Yeah.
And so you want the big bang again in the country. You want a government that recognises that.
I'm quite curious. I haven't heard much about this. What would be Reform's policy on university? Because we've seen recently Labour have actually, put tuition fees and things up to inflation. That will continue as it goes along. If Reform was in power, possibly even right now, what would you say their policy would be for young people about to go to university? Would obviously it wouldn't be possible to go back to the time where university was free for everyone. But do you think they'd do something to almost cut back the significant cost that now university has on so many people?
I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. I'm not involved in that. I do think that university is great, but it's not the be-all and end-all.
Yeah.
You have very successful people who've never been to university. I really would like to see young people armed with the best digital skills.
Yeah.
My husband had a digital, he was setting up a digital company, and all the coders are offshore, and they charge a fortune. And there's a reason for that. We don't have homegrown tech talent.
Yeah.
And I think that is the best thing we could do for young people. I want to see all our young people in hoodies on a computer, creating the tech companies of the future. So yeah, universities are important, but you have to also have a job at the end of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's, as you say, it costs a fortune. And so many people, I've met so many kids who are like 24 who've been to Oxford and don't have a job.
Yeah.
I'm sure you're the same. And what do you say to them? It's because the employment laws are so prohibitory to employing, and companies. I mean, we've got Revolut has gone to set up its headquarters in France, one of our best unicorns, and I want to see them stay here. I want to see you finish the job market and have a plethora of job opportunities, but you don't right now.
Does that mean less red tape?
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the reasons I voted for Brexit. In Europe, you have so much regulation. For instance, a vacuum cleaner has hundreds of regulation. In America, it has a few, but mainly if it sells, it sells. The markets decide. I don't want the government to decide the winners and losers, and that's what's happening right now. The governments decide, and it's all down to ideology.
Yeah.
Right. So if it's green, if it's sustainable, they get more funding, they get more subsidies. That's what you're seeing here. We are no longer a thriving economy where businesses are desperate to come. So yeah, we don't need more regulation. We need better regulation.
Yeah.
Right.
We don't need more legislation. We need better legislation. People governments love to show that they're doing something. So they're like, well, a new law for this, a new law for that, a new regulation for that. That's not what it stifles innovation. Regulation, and actually the Conservatives failed to deregulate from Brexit. Kemi Badenoch was in charge of that. She only removed something like 400. She said it was too hard to remove the rest. I'm sorry, that's what we voted for.
Do we not need more legislation to protect the rights of workers? We've seen that with Labour, getting rid of 0-hour contracts and raising the minimum wage, so that especially young people like us aren't exploited in the workplace. And
also a little bit on the regulation, like you said about the consumer. Don't you think a little bit of regulation, like you said, even better regulation, should be there to protect the consumer from possibly either harmful products or something that could, either have a fault or something like that, to make sure these things are actually safe for people to buy?
That's fine. Of course, sure. But the regulation can't stifle innovation.
Yeah.
Right. So we're the least automated country in the G7 right now, and you see it. We've relied on foreign cheap labour for so long that we've failed to invest in skills, automation, and the problem is you talk about employer rights, but when employer rights are stopping people from getting hired, they're a self-defeating prophecy. Right, so the balance has to be right. So if someone gets rights from day one and they want to remove probation, I'm not exactly sure what they're bringing in. Then if people are like, you know what, I'm just not going to hire anyone new.
Yeah.
That's the problem. Don't forget, businesses are not charities. They're there to make money. That's it. Yeah. And some people might view that as evil and greed, but. Greed is what fuels the economy. Individual companies want to make money. And if regulation and excessive employment laws stop that, they just won't. They'll go somewhere else.
Mm.
And we've seen that.
Mm. Something I'd like to talk to you about, slightly off topic, is Doge. I'd like to just understand a bit more about that. Is it reforms plan with that, the success of that? Even is it implemented in your ward?
No, because we're not empowered. It can only be implemented in the councils that we run.
I see. Sorry.
So
tell us a bit
that's
about
fine. But I think I'm not sure of the exact figure, but since we've won, and it's only been a few months, across 12 or 13 councils, I think we've saved about 100 million. So in such a short time, we've saved so much. So imagine that nationally. And there is a massive amount of waste. For instance, when I was a lawyer at the Crown prosecution, we had a huge sustainability department. We're lawyers with computers, and they were getting paid double that I was. And I'm the lawyer, and a senior one at that. And we just don't need that. You have a massive managerial layer in the NHS. Totally unnecessary. And I think, but it takes a lot of work to cut. And, about 50% of the public work for the government or work for an organisation that works for the government at arm's length. So it's very hard to get people to vote for cuts. But of course, nobody wants to pay more taxes. The thing is, taxes just can't keep going up. It de-incentivizes people to work and to save. So something has to happen. And successive governments always talk about tax rises. They never talk about cutting spending. And then when you do talk about cutting spending, they say, you're going to cut frontline services. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about government waste, of which there's so much.
At the moment, I think if you were to cut government spending, for instance, if reform was in right now, you get the rhetoric from Labour about the £22 billion black hole, and this kind of, we've almost lost the money that was once there. How do you if you're able to cut even more, how would you be able to fund these vital public services that people rely on, for instance, like the trains and or just any mode of public transportation? How can that kind of stuff be funded?
Well, the trains, so the way you pay for the public sector is to grow the private sector, right? And that's what the governments fail to understand. So what they're doing is they're punishing the private sector with excessive regulation and taxation and asking the public to pay for public services. We will never cut public services. People say we want to privatise the NHS. That's complete rubbish. Absolutely not.
What's
the
reality of
NHS
that,
is the
then?
pride and joy of our nation. My family's been saved by the NHS. My father had a heart attack. My sister had cancer. I mean, that was during COVID, where she was let down. But my husband's American, and we fear getting ill. I remember, we had he had like heart palpitations, and we went to a hospital, and he got £1,000 bill, thousands just for a check.
Yeah.
So it's not about that, but we're pumping billions, tens of billions into the NHS, and outcomes are the worst they've ever been. So there has to be some kind of change. I also believe for the NHS, we don't have a preventative program. We don't have screening. So, for instance, you can only get a mammogram at the age of 50. And a few friends of mine are oncologists, and they say there's a huge epidemic of 30 and 40-year-old women who have breast cancer.
Yeah.
Same with bowel cancer. You can't get a colonoscopy when you're 60, whereas other European countries have a very good screening mechanism, and we don't. We react as opposed to prevent.
Yeah.
And I'd like to see that changed. But we have to cut. How can we not? What we cannot afford. You don't want to leave university and give half your money to the government, do you?
No.
No.
Yeah, I mean that's why we're against privatisation as well of the NHS. So, if Reform don't want to privatise the NHS, what do they want to do? Because I think a lot of people are under the belief that Reform does in fact want to privatise.
The only reason why they're doing that people think that, is because Labour put out a completely false ad saying that we do. It's completely false. We definitely don't want it. It will always be free at the point of service. But of course there's reform. For instance, my sister, when she had cancer, we had to wait days, if not weeks, for an MRI result or an X-ray result. Do you know how it's heartbreaking? It's so difficult. You don't know if you're going to be told if you have cancer or not, or if it's come back. AI fixes that. AI machine, it reads it immediately. So there is modernization that needs to happen. I want to see resources only directed to frontline services, that actually delivers the service. I don't need, I don't know if you saw, but there was an ad for kind of, relationship management or something at 100. How many people who are not doctors and nurses or involved in medical care who are getting paid over 100,000 in the NHS. That's what we need to cut in every public service.
Does that make it more of a redirection rather than like a cutback almost?
Yeah, we're definitely not cutting back services. We're actually making services work. We have some of the worst cancer rates in Europe. And we've become the international health service. You know, you can access the NHS if you're not from here. And that's a huge problem. But I want the NHS to work. You know, the other day my husband actually was quite ill. He had a severe headache. We're like, you know what, shall we go to A&E? We'll be there for 4 or 5 hours. Is it worth it? And how many other people think that? You know, he couldn't stand, he couldn't lay down. And you're like, actually, you know what, I'm not going to go. That's not working. I mean, I have a hip problem and I don't have private insurance, and I know that the operation is going to be thousands. But I haven't been to see a GP because I'm like, I'm just going to wait a year. What's the point? You know, and I'm paying into it. That's not working.
Why is there so much strain on the public services? Is it just down to previous management under the Conservatives, not enough investment, or what is the main fault as to why there's so much strain?
I think there's many faults, right? I think, as we said, there's a lot of waste. So money's running out. Okay. But I also think mass migration has a huge effect, because when you let in, you know, the Boris wave let in 6.5 million people who do have access to public services. Their dependents have access to public services. And we're a small island. We don't have the capability because they failed to build more public services to account for the excessive amount of people. For instance, they failed to build prisons, even if you just account for the normal percentage of people who commit crime within that. So then they release prisoners, dangerous prisoners. And it's a dereliction of duty.
Why do you think someone like Boris Johnson would let in that so many of those people? In theory, if you know you're Conservative, you'd traditionally presume that you'd want less migration, or especially illegal migration and legal migration. Why do you think that was the case under the Conservative government?
Maybe it was the easy answer, you know, a quick fix. I don't know. Maybe he believes in mass migration. I don't know. Why did they lock us down and prevent us from having 6 people when it was an arbitrary number? Maybe it was just an arbitrary decision. That's the problem. I don't know. You guys are quite young, but during COVID, I had to go see my sister in a full hazmat.
I'm very curious, because I know Nigel is wants people who have indefinite leave to remain that to be gone and to send people back. That is a very controversial policy, and I'm really curious. Is that a solution to the Boris wave?
No, it's not that. So what we want right now, indefinite leave to remain, is indefinite. Right? And when you get it, you have full access to public resources, even though you haven't contributed potentially to this country. What we're saying, like any country, like most serious countries, is that you will apply for a visa that has certain conditions, and they're not very difficult conditions. That you speak English, you don't have a criminal record. That is the basic. And that's just normal. And you can reapply, and if you've been here long enough, you can get citizenship. And we have some people who've been here for decades, and they're like, I don't want to be British. Then the taxpayer shouldn't be paying for you. I'm sorry, if you don't want to commit to this country and be British, then we have no business paying for your upkeep. You can go back to the country that you connect to more and let them fork the bill. And that's it. But we have to do something about the tax bill.
Sorry, just before you. What does it mean to be British? That might sound like a silly question, but what does it really mean?
Yeah, I have thought about this. So for me being British, so what you see is, right, so for me, when I talk about being British, my parents came here in the 60s only wanting to assimilate. Right? They came because they love Britain. But for instance, you have certain Muslim communities here who come here and want the country to change for them. And if the country doesn't change for them, they say it's racist. But wanting to preserve your values as a British person, it's not racist. It's patriotic, actually. Anyone wants to preserve their way of life. And for me, being British is being allowed to say what you want, being allowed to offend, being okay with being offended. We have a wicked sense of humour. It's tea after every depressing moment. Basically, it's tea on tap. You know, it's being tolerant, but not being a pushover. right? And we are very accepting and we're very open-minded. I think we're way more open-minded than European countries.
So you said that being British is tolerance.
Yeah.
And I think most people would agree with you there. But most people listening have probably seen Sarah Pochin's comments on adverts and not wanting to see black people or Asian people or people that aren't white essentially, which I know she's taken back and apologised for. But do you not think that gives Reform a bit of a bad rap as not being tolerant and therefore not embodying British values?
So what Sarah Pochin said was actually quite long, but people have clipped that first sentence. And really, you can take so many first sentences
Of course.
out of context and make it whatever you want. And the first sentence does sound awful. I forgot, I don't know what she said about seeing... and it was clumsily worded. But her point was, whether you agree with it or not, is that white people are underrepresented in adverts. And she's not happy about that. It doesn't mean that she doesn't want to see, ethnic minorities on adverts. She just wants to see white people, British people, more represented. I don't think that makes it racist. It was an observation.
Right.
And I know her, and I've met her many times, and she's definitely not racist. And actually, if I ever had any inkling that, I'm Egyptian, African. I actually did my genetics. I'm 100% Egyptian.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Very
which is
cool.
quite rare. And you can trace my
That's awesome.
maternal lineage to East Africa 30,000 years ago. So I'm like
That's so cool.
Exactly. So I'm like proper. And I'm Muslim. And if I ever thought that Reform was a Muslim, was a racist party, I would never be part of it. You'd never ever. I have my best friends are black. My best friends are Asian, Indian. I have very good friends that are Pakistani. Never in a million years. And it was never about race for us. It's never about the color of your skin. It's about, if you don't come to this country and assimilate and you want to change it and you want to just take from it, then I'm sorry, you're just not welcome. We have the best country in the world. And if you come and embrace it, it will give so much back to you. But if you fight it and you want to destroy it, then I'm sorry, you're just not welcome here. And that's what it all comes down to. It's preserving the beautiful country we have. And that does mean different people contributing, but it also means an underlying culture. The one we discussed effectively, it does include a lot of tea, but it includes a common culture of being British. And that is, as we said, being tolerant, freedom of speech, freedom to think, freedom to move, freedom to show your face if you're a woman. And we all live under one law, and that's British law.
Well, Leila, thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you.
It was a fantastic discussion
Thank you.
and such a very cool building.
Thank
you
you.
again
Thank
for
you for
inviting
having
us.
me. Thank
Thank
you.
you all for listening.
It was in sync.